All right, so I have a crazy story for you guys today, and we're going to be visiting the remnants of a Nazi village in Chile, believe it or not, nestled right in the foothills of the Andes here that you can see behind me. We're really close, so let's get going, and I'll tell you more on the way. Woo! Okay, so we are today visiting what used to be called Colonia Dignidad. It's like the Dignity colony, and recently it has been rebranded as Villa Baviera, like the Bavarian village. So this was actually founded by a piece of human scum by the name of Paul Shappert. Paul Shappert was a Nazi sergeant in Nazi Germany, and after the war he subscribed to some sort of quasi-religious beliefs, ostensibly Christian but not really, as you'll find out by the story. And he started working with children. He was arrested and charged by the German government in 1959 with sexually abusing some of the children that he worked with. And instead of facing justice, he escaped, and he escaped to Chile. So he arrived here in Chile in 1961 with a few hundred of his closest followers and whatever sort of weird quasi-religious cult he was setting up, and they set up Colonia Dignidad. So a little German colony in the foothills of the Andes here. He was working hand in hand with the Chilean government. They gave him permission, and this was essentially a state within a state. Wasn't accountable in any way to the Chilean government. They didn't even pay taxes because they had agreements with the government, which I'll tell you about after. And they created this little state that was supposed to be, they presented it to the outside world as like a agricultural utopia, and they were trying to help, allegedly, the Chilean people in the area after a really severe earthquake. The reality was much, much darker. After they arrived here and they started building their buildings for their colony, they erected walls around it. The walls had barbed wire, there was watchtowers, searchlights, just like Nazi Germany. And none of the people were allowed outside. They weren't allowed to leave the colony. They were completely controlled by Paul Shappert, who they called their permanente uncle. Their permanente uncle, which means the permanent uncle. And he was eventually worshipped as a god there. And he controlled every aspect of their lives. They weren't allowed to have TV. They weren't even allowed to have calendars. They weren't even allowed to have sex. He said no sex for anybody. But the reality was he was having sex with children. Just abusing children, and depending how you look at it, that could be the worst stuff that went on there, but there was far darker stuff: murders, torture, all kinds of stuff. Chile in the 70s was under the control of Augusto Pinochet, who was a military dictator, and Paul Shappert had an agreement with him, and a lot of the people some of the people that disappeared in Chile during those years ended up in Colonia Dignidad, tortured, murdered, all kinds of things. Really, really, really crazy. Paul Shappert ran this place and basically did what he wanted for quite a while. He fled, I believe, in the late 90s to Argentina, but he didn't face justice until like the late 90s or early 2000s, and he didn't die until 2006. But he got away with what he did for a long, long time. And he was caught abusing children here by some leakers and fled. But the colony remains. So the colony has tried to rebrand itself as like a German tourist town, but it's obviously got a really dark history. It's way out of the way. Like back in the 60s, there would have been this was in the middle of absolutely nowhere. We're in the foothills of the Andes. So most of the people that are here still are actually the direct descendants of those first colonists. And Colonia Dignidad had slave labor, everything you can imagine Nazi Germany police state apparently is exactly what this was like. So you can visit it, which we're gonna go do, and you can stay there, which I'm also gonna do. Just did a little bit of a splurge because it just seems so crazy. I'd heard of this years and years ago and forgot about it, and I only found it again a few days ago, and I thought, yeah, let's go check it out, eat a German meal. But what a crazy, crazy story. And apparently they even found, as recently as 2005, the government came in here and they found weapons caches. And we're not just talking about a couple pistols. They found obviously rifles and stuff, but they found machine guns, they found rockets and rocket launchers, and huge amounts of ammunition. And when they found it in 2005, they said that the weapons looked like they were about 40 years old, so they would have been smuggled in the time of close to when they were building this place. But they had recent signs of servicing, so they knew about them and they were servicing them. So this here would have all had watchtowers, barbed wire. Seems really crazy. Still controlled entry and exit, although apparently the people are allowed to leave these days. Hola, buenas. ¿Cómo le va?
Muy bien, gracias.
Yo tengo un reserva en el hotel.
¿Tiene reserva en el hotel?
Sí, Ken Shappert.
Adelante.
Gracias.
Que tenga buena tarde.
Well, didn't see any watchtowers or barbed wire. Apparently a lot of these buildings are the original buildings. Where I'm going, they've tried to make them a little bit nicer. But there's still buildings where horrible stuff happened. There's slave labor, abuse. Oh wow, that's beautiful. Apparently there's lots of underground stuff where they were torturing, murdering people. They used dogs for torture, electrocution. It's really crazy. You still see, I mean, they got barbed wire in there still, keeping people out, or in, or both. So after the military dictatorship in Chile ended, and all this came out about Colonia Dignidad, they did confirm that Paul Schaefer worked with Augusto Pinochet and helped with the police stuff here and disappearing people and interrogating people. But there does seem to be some controversy over just how much cooperation there was, and they suspect that there was actually quite a bit of closer cooperation than has come out. Also, there's some discussion, I suppose, whether it was just a cult or how much it really was Nazi-ish. It was run like Nazi Germany. There was lots of former Nazis here, and I think the nail in the coffin, or the thing that makes it quite obvious, is that Simon Wiesenthal, a very famous Jew hunter, said that Joseph Mengele, the infamous, horrendous Nazi doctor, spent some time here before he went to Brazil. So, I mean, just crazy, but it's beautiful. It's probably the craziest thing, is just how beautiful it is. I wonder, okay. There's the hotel. Okay.
Okay, so definitely has kind of a weird atmosphere here. I guess partly because it's just a little bit of Germany in the beautiful Chilean countryside, and partly because, you know, the sort of weird Nazi-esque history. And the people are so friendly here, but there's also like a little bit of sort of just a weird feeling of like, I know you're here because this used to be crazy. Like our parents did crazy things here and I grew up in this. But they're all very friendly. As soon as I got to my room, knock on the door, and they brought me, I don't know if you can see it, how well you'll be able to see it, apple juice. But it's like reddy brown apple juice, not clear apple juice like we drink. And she told me that it's apples that they grow here. It's good, just fresh apple juice, but tastes a little bit different. Anyway, I don't really know what there is to do here. Just the story was crazy. I had to come see it. Gonna go, there's a German restaurant, so we'll go get some German food later for dinner. And the surrounding area is just beautiful. I'll show you, there's some hills here, and you can see the snow-covered peaks in the distance. Apparently there's a museum also. I asked to go to the museum and she just gave me kind of a strange look like, oh, really? Like you want to go to the museum and find out all this crazy stuff that happened? And she said that there was no guides today. So I asked if there could be a guide ready in the morning after I run breakfast before I head out. So anyway, we'll just walk around, see what to see. It's more the story for me as opposed to anything to do here, but what an insane story. Real surreal to be here. Check it out. Definitely not even a tiny bit creepy. There's no one else here. Like there's nobody around. There's nobody else in the hotel. I think there's a couple people eating at the restaurant. Don't know if they're from here, but like I'm the only person here. It's so weird. Okay, so apparently this really was a state within a state. They have their own airport here. They had their own hospital. And in the 70s, when Chile and Argentina had a war, the Chilean army had a base here and used it as a springboard for the war. The hospital here also had a laboratory where they helped produce sarin gas for the Chilean government or for themselves. I don't really know, but they produced sarin gas here. It was crazy. I don't think there's really too much to do here. It's just like a little farming village type thing, tourist area, at least the facade. I wonder where the entrances to the underground prisons are. Let's go find some food. It's wild. Nice dual bratwurst, longandiza, German sausage mustard, nice Kinz juice made from here. It's really good. It's so strange. Really so strange. First, oh, I'm gonna eat it. I don't know what this stuff is. I'm prepared not to like it, but I'll try it. I have no idea what that is. Anybody knows German food? I don't know what that is. And now, some fresh apple strudel con crema. Well, that was all right. Some German food in the middle of Chile, right in the Andes. What a weird place. This has got to be one of the weirdest places I've ever been. To think that, like, all the rape and murder and torture and Nazi police state that went on here, and the fact that they had machine guns and rocket launchers and Joseph Mengele, and they made sarin gas, and their own airport and everything, just insanity. And then today, it's been repackaged and sold as like a tourist thing, although there's really nobody else here. Wild. Really, really strange. And I can't remember if I mentioned it, but the Schaefer guy who came here in, I think, 61 and got away with it for years and years and years and fled. He was only arrested in 2005. The guy lived his whole life. He was arrested in 2005, died in 2006. So that piece of scum literally got to live his life just doing horrible, horrible things. I'm not a religious person, but I hope there's a hell for him. Wow. But it's beautiful. Like, it's really beautiful. Check this out. Well, again, there's not too much to show. It's really more just the story and the history of the place. It's insanity. I'm really hoping to go to the museum. I've asked a couple times. They haven't got back to me with the time, so we'll see. If I get to go to the museum, I'll show you tomorrow, and if not, that is going to be the end of the video, and we're going to head towards the mountains tomorrow, explore more of Chile. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you found it even a bit as fascinating as I did, and stay tuned, a lot more coming up. Thanks again.